Knowledge Center. It's where you can find all the bulletins that we put out from Metrc end, the live chat feature, like I mentioned, and then if you go up here to my activities, this is actually where you can track tickets. So you don't have to call into support to follow up on the ticket. If you have access to this, if you've signed up for this, and you've submitted a ticket, you can actually track it directly on here through the My Activities thing. The reason I want to bring this up is because this is where you can find the processing job bulletin. And that is here. This is what we have, and you'll see it's actually linked to an additional guidance that the OLCC has also put out. So this bulletin explains how the functionality works, and then the OLCC guidance document goes in a lot more detail about how you're supposed to use it based on the regulations of Oregon. The reason that the processing job, the benefits there is, first of all, you can do multi-day extraction. So if it's a process that takes multiple days, you're able to record those multiple steps throughout the course of that processing job. It's also going to get rid of the production batch button. So if you're not going to need to remember to click that every time, it'll automatically associate a production batch with any packages created from the processing job, instead of, if you forget to click that production batch button, which I know has happened to probably everyone in this room that's a processor. The other piece of that is you're actually going to be able to record multiple outputs from one input. So if you're doing pulling multiple different packages out of one processing job, you're able to record all of that. Additionally, there's going to be more waste recording for that. So you're actually going to be able to track the waste that's coming from the processing job itself. Overall, it's going to just add more visibility for you all to what your outputs are, what your inputs are, and really give you a little bit more analytics of how your yields are doing when it comes to those processing jobs.
And real quick, just on the LLCC side, so this is a new rule that we passed last year, and it's effective April 15th. All processing in Metrc is going to be through this new feature in 9 days. So that is obviously processors, but it's also micro producers who can do concentrates. It's also keef production, because that's a concentrate, right? So any processing activity that you currently should be using the production batch feature for is going to be going through the processing jobs. And like Brent said, there's been bulletins on this, so there's screenshots, things like that. Fingers crossed, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to show you another thing around 10 o'clock that you all are going to be able to get more like sandbox learning with with processing jobs as well.
Yes, and to teach this part, I'm going to take you through this here, but there's it's any time that you're either combining things or you're extracting things, and you'll see that in a second. Here.
And combining things in terms of like homogenization,
yes,
not like combining usable, but like a homogenization stuff.
Yes. So first step is you got to set up the processing job. So there's going to be under the new admin tab, processing job types. So you will navigate over there. And then you'll see here the ability to add and edit job types. So we're going to go ahead and add one here. The name, this is for you all, for your employees to kind of identify which processing job it is. So for here, we're going to do the OLCC demo. And then we're going to indicate it's an extraction. Description, this is going to be for your employees to be able to know if you're going in there to know give it a little bit more detail to it. Just a brief description. It does not have to be overly complex, because that's where the processing steps comes in. So the description would be a simple explanation. In the processing steps, this should follow what your SOPs are. So you are able to go in and edit these after you create them. So if you have SOPs, please put them in this processing steps section. And then if you update your SOPs, make sure you're going and updating those SOPs here in the processing steps. And just so you're aware, this is if you need more information about what you're supposed to be putting here, that's all in this processing job guide. The OLCC put together. I know it's a bit small, but if you do navigate to the bulletin, it's linked there. It's also in the wiki, as I understand it, as well. But they have the definitions here, and then if you scroll down, it'll explain how you set everything up as far as the SOPs and the attributes, which we're going to flip over here in a second. So these would be your SOP steps.
And the short, we don't want you to transcribe your full SOPs here. All you're required to do here is put in, and you can, what we call daisy chain SOPs together. If you've got certain SOPs for certain steps of the end-to-end process, you can put more than one SOP in here. But for the one or the more than one you have that details this processing job type, so this extraction process, whatever this is that you're creating, you would put in the unique name of your SOP, including, the date of revision or whatever your convention is for tracking those, right? And those are things you're already required to have in rule. And as part of Metrc audits, the processors will ask for those. So this is just where you would put in, XYZ SOP version 1.2 or whatever, right? That's what you would put in here. And then we would be able to request that SOP and see the full detail, right?
And then once you've created the processing steps, you're gonna have a category. There's two categories. So there's the extraction of cannabinoids and there's the incorporation of cannabinoids. On the OLCC guidance that spells you out which is which. Easy way of looking at it, extraction, your output's gonna be less than what you're putting in. And then your incorporation of cannabinoids, that's going to be, your outputs are going to be either equal to or greater than what you're putting in. So in this case, it's going to be an extraction. And then the attributes, these are all defined on the OLCC guidance for what you're supposed to put here. For this one, it's going to simply just be a process that uses hydrocarbon solvents, for example. You can add multiple attributes. So in the example of, if you are combining cannabinoids, probably you're going to use more multi-attribute processing jobs, such as, creating edibles, things like that. That's going to be.
Can we look at the attributes for just 1 second longer?
Oh, yep. Sorry about that. So like I said, if you're making an edible, you're probably making something for oral consumption, but you're also probably maybe making something that has a food allergen or something like that. So you'd add multiple attributes for that processing job.
Do you have a question about them?
No, I just wanted to read them.
Yep.
Okay.
So these are listed in our rules. These are also listed in the guide that that Bren showed, and it details when you should use which. All of those correspond to things that are already in rule. So I'll give you an example. Water activity testing on usable marijuana. That's not required if the processing you're doing on that usable uses a sterilization method. There's never been anything in Metrc to track whether or not a process uses a sterilization method. And so we've never really had a great way of knowing usable that came in untested for water activity and was processed, should that have been tested or not? So these are the types of things where we're going to be able to see based on the outputs, should the usable have been tested for water activity? Should the label include an allergen statement? Should you have the higher level of requirements for your premises because it could blow up? Like those are the sorts of things we're tracking here, right?
So now that I've entered all this information in, I'd create my processing job type. You'll see that's here now. Again, you can edit as well. So if there is you need to update the description or the processing step, your SOP list, that's how you do it. Pretty straightforward. And when it comes to creating your processing job, so now that you've configured it, so think of it like anything else you're configuring with your locations, you can now use it, or your items, you can now use it in the processing job. So there's two ways you can go. You can either go to your packages, so you can select multiple inputs, like I said. So we'll take two packages of flour that we're going to turn into a concentrate. Add processing jobs. So you see the processing job type. So we're going to select that OLCC demo extraction that we just created. This is going to be a processing job name. So this would be, think of this like if you're a producer, like a harvest batch name, where you're giving an overall batch name that you're going to enter. So easily identifiable for your employees, but also helps for the OLCC to know. For an example, if this is an VHO extraction, and then put the date here. So Start date be today, and then here on the right hand side, you're going to indicate how much you're pulling out of those input packages. So say it's 1,000 grams, 1,000 grams for both. And then once you've selected your inputs, you're going to indicate what unit of measure you're going to use for those inputs. So you can actually switch the unit of measure. So if you are in grams and you wanted to look at it in pounds, you could do so and automatically convert all of that for you. When you pull it out, it will go into the unit of measure that the item that you're creating is. So whether or not you're going to keep this could just be for your processing jobs, or if you want to keep it consistent for grams, you can do that as well. But we will, I'm going to keep it to grams here, just to make it a little easier for me, a little cleaner. But that is, so once you have that created, you'll create your processing jobs. And so I did this from the packages. So now I'm going to navigate over here to the processing jobs. So it's a drop down under the packages, the processing jobs screen. So you can actually create, you can also create packaging processing jobs from this page as well. But you can do it from either the package screen by selecting them, or you can just start the job and then select all of your packages from the pick list. So either way it works. And I will start date here. So we've got a BHO extraction 4623. Once you created it, you have the ability to adjust. So say I wanted to add another package of input or add more from one of those inputs, you would select adjust. You would put in the amounts that you were adjusting for. So say I'm taking putting another 500 in here. And I'm not taking any from this one. I would adjust it here, and then you have to put the reason code. So the reason code right now is entry error. I know I'm talking with the LCC. As you start working through it, if there are different reasons codes, there's some things that you just pass on to the LCC and they can discuss whether or not we need to add additional reason codes for this.
And this is like package adjustments. This isn't like, I'm going to start with this and then I'm just going to keep feeding more and more. That's not the way you use this. Adjustments is, oops, I mistyped something. Oops, I forgot a package. Like those are the reasons adjustments are there. And adjustments like actually it's a little bit different, because with these adjustments, you're not going to be able to add more starting material if you've already created packages out or done any other stuff to that job. So it's really like, oops, I made a mistake correction method. Right?
Correct. Yeah. TJ's point, once you start pulling packages out, you will not be able to adjust. So we're going to do an adjustment here just to add a little bit more weight to the inputs. And then from there, you're going to run that process. So in this case, you're extracting out, and then you're going to create your packages. So you'll see some of the familiar fields here. Production batch number is still there. So you will still be entering that in. You'll put your tag in, location, extraction room, and then we're going to say and then we're going to put our output. So let's say this is 100 grams. So you can put a note in that's optional, and then the production batch number. So this is similar to what you're using already for your production batch number. This should be a unique number that you are tracking everything through. This is going to follow those packages as that production batch number. So in this case, we'll go BHO. I've done a couple of these, so we're going to go with 003. Package date, so the date you're packaging it, and then you do have the ability to finish the processing job. So I want to show you kind of what details there are there. So you have your finish date, and then you have your waste weight. So this is going to be whatever that waste weight coming out of it. So if you're using an extraction, that gunk that you end up with, that's all being recorded here. I'm not going to do it quite yet, so I want to show you.
Before you do that, just on the waste piece. So the waste, our rules say the waste is on the source material. So this is on the stuff, the input material, the spent material, right? That's what you are recording as the waste. And if you're doing the extraction, our shorthand for it is the mathematical method. So in rule, it details a little more in that guide as well, but we don't expect you to like have solvent laden product and then put it on a scale. because that gets iffy. So you're able to basically mathematically back out what physical material you have left based on what you extracted. And then with the incorporation of cannabinoids, because it's equal to or greater than, you're not really going to have waste on the source material because all of that is going into the new thing. So that's why we have that demarcation at the top level of which type it is. So we expect whether or not to see waste reported. Yeah.
How does that account for transfer loss and things along those lines? Because generally you are not going to have 100% of homogenization. You are going to have a little bit of loss.
Yeah.
That's our experience.
Yeah, so yield rates, right? So yield
Even
rate.
if I'm just homogenizing 2 finished batches, I'll end up with anywhere between 5 and 20 grams stuck to a pan that I can't remove.
Right.
Which means that I won't have an equal to or greater than. It will generally always be less than.
Yeah, so that's where that is helpful for us at the demarcation at the top is, I mean, we know that stuff gets stuck to spoons. We know that stuff gets stuck to jars. So it's not necessarily literally going to be 1 for 1, but if you're incorporating cannabinoids and you're getting 10% yield, that's a little bit different than getting 5 grams here or there, right? So that's the difference there. Does that answer your question?
More or less.
Yeah.
So for adjustments, like when we make gummies and there's like a leftover gummy kind of amount, you're saying we would pull the, because usually we just adjust the waste or like that weight of the gummy. You're saying we would just adjust the cannabis that's in that gummy?
No, so in the case of what's coming out the other side, you're creating a package and then any adjustments are going to be done on that side. Right, so the gummies, you're creating the gummies, and then if you have waste at the gummy level, you're adjusting it like any other package.
All right, any other questions? All right. So I'm going to create this package. It should, appear in your packages page, just like any other production batch package you've had in the past. And then there's 2 steps. So one thing I do want to note is the discontinue button. So you can discontinue if you do create something, you don't actually run it, and you actually want to put all that product back. There's this X button on the right-hand side, and that would just discontinue it and then put all of your product back into the input packages they came from. Outside of that, once you've created your packages, so again, you can create more and more packages as you run those multiple runs, but once you are completed, you're ready to finish. So you finish your package or your processing job, excuse me. Your date finished, so your date, and then the weight here. So this is the waste weight. So similar to with the processing job, you can indicate your waste in any unit of measure, whether it's pounds or grams. I'm going to do grams just because it's a little bit simpler. Say it's just make a nice even one, wasting out all of it. Finish the processing job. That'll move it to your inactive. Yeah. You'll see here that you do have the ability to unfinish. So if you realize that there was actually more product that you pulled out than that, you can still unfinish it up until the point where you do anything with your production batch packages. So similar to if you're a producer, similar to a harvest batch, if you move that harvest batch package, you're not going to be able to unfinish that harvest any longer, right? So that's pretty much end-to-end of functionality. Again, I encourage you to take advantage of the materials we have available, the bulletin documentation we have on our page. Please check out Metrc Knowledge Center. There's a lot of good features on there that we'd love for folks to take advantage of. And then also to the link, the bulletin, you'll see there's the link to in the bulletin on our end, there's a link to the OLCC bulletin as well. And then I know in the OLCC, they've got also some video walkthroughs available. And then our training is also being updated as well in Metrc Learn. So Metrc Learn, if anyone's not aware of it, it's a great tool to sign up for as well. It has on-demand training videos, advanced training videos, also our modular-based training. And then we also have some short videos on processing jobs specifically there.
Can you go to the wiki real quick?
New tab and just do wiki-or.
So hopefully everyone knows about the Oregon Metric Wiki. If you don't, you should. So it's wiki-or.metric.com. So this is where OLCC populates a bunch of stuff, including links to guides, workflows, things like that. Can you go to the processing jobs? So this is where we have links out to all the resources that we've created. I want to highlight the processing job type template, sorry.
I got that.
Oh.
That's that one. I can switch it.
Yeah. So the trick here is processing jobs is replacing production batches. And so we can't implement processing jobs until we're actually ready to turn off production batches and packages. So it's got to just fully transition. The downside of that is that you all can't go into Metrc and pre-populate your job types, right? That's something frankly, I didn't really think about, right, until it was too late. So to help with this, we've created this processing job type template, which has the elements that are in Metrc. And so the idea here is you on paper can start reviewing your processing jobs that you do in your facility, get it into the template, and then on the 15th, or as you start doing it for the first time after the 15th, it's just transcription. Like you just have your template, you give it to an employee and they create it in Metrc and that's all they gotta do. And then it's ready to roll. Yeah.
Is there gonna be a mass upload template available to us, like a CSV, or are we gonna have to build these out one by one?
So for now, you're gonna have to do it one by one.
Oh,
There
alright.
is, I don't know about API endpoints for that. I don't know the answer to that, but so you can do it. The job type is like an item or a string, right? It's like the top level information that has more of the stuff, and then you snag it to use it as a reference item or when you actually do a process. So you don't have to do it all at once. Like you can do it as you start doing it for the first time, if that helps. But no, there's no CSV option for at the job type level right now. And I mean, on that note, I don't know how many of you were here in 2016, but we've gotten to a pretty stable point in Oregon with Metrc. This is different, right? This is a callback to the early days where we're introducing new stuff and we're all figuring it out to a degree as we go, right? So this has been worked on. This was an Oregon request. We're the first state to be doing this. We wouldn't have requested it if it wasn't really important, useful stuff for us and for you. And so it is going to be a gain and a win, but there is going to be a learning curve, right? And there are going to be things that through this group or just, issues that come up will iteratively add to and solve them, right? But it is going to be a bit of a learning curve. I will fully admit that. Yes.
So are we gonna have access to a sandbox to play in prior to it going live? Because as it stands with the way that I understand how jobs work in Metrc, it is not gonna work very well for our processing facility. Like I don't have the ability to put multiple jobs into a single input as I see it. And I'm afraid that come April 15th, we're going to be out of compliance because we're not able to do things the way that you all have intended that we should be doing them.
So a couple different things. One on the sandbox question. At 10 o'clock, we'll see. I'm hoping. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic, but we'll see. Second question, can you explain in a little bit more detail what you mean by multiple jobs going in the same input?
So we will, the way our basic extraction process works is, we will put an extraction bag into a column that gets extracted and then poured into a pan. Sometimes we will run multiple extractions and put them into the same pan. Those would technically be separate jobs because I don't know how many bags I'm going to do in a day. So I'm either having to cancel jobs that I've made and waste time making extra jobs, or wait until the end of the day and then do all of the Metrc work after the fact. And that doesn't seem like the appropriate thing to do either. Like, we're pretty dynamic in how we go, and based on what's happening with the extractors. I mean, we're doing anywhere from 80 to 200 kilos of biomass processed a day. And that depends on how the machine's running or how the biomass looks, how milled it was. There's a lot of different factors that go into what we do and how we do it. And it seems like jobs are really rigid and don't give us much flexibility.
So a couple of things. One, like Brent said, the job can stretch over multiple days. So think about like, this is kind of a hybrid of like the packaging functionality in Metrc and harvest batches. So with harvest batches, you harvest into a batch and then you have 45 days to record everything and get stuff out the other side, waste that sort of thing. Obviously, this is not 45 days, but the idea is you've got your set of SOPs, you've got your starting material, and then it takes the amount of time it takes, right? So it doesn't have to be what I'm going to accomplish in one day. It's what is going to be in that tray. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you can take multiple outputs from the same job, right? So like if you day one get one tray, day two you get the second tray, right? So it can stretch across multiple days and it can be multiple sets of columns going into it, right? Does that make sense?
Because you're selecting the package and that's the column, right?
Well, so it's changing the philosophy from like a one-to-one like it is right now to kind of the accumulation of stuff you're doing to get the output, right? So we care about how much accumulative starting material you're having and how much from that you're getting at the end, right? So it is just the intent is to be more flexible than it is right now in terms of you have a set of packages and one package coming out the other side, right? But I think, like I said earlier, I mean, it's going to be iterative, both in terms of like the nuts and bolts functionality, but also those sorts of things, because we're not going to be able to have thought of the however many processors we have, 300 something, like 380 processes times the number of processes each processor has. So there's going to be things that we got to think through in terms of workflow and working with you to make sure that it's you know, being done correctly for everyone, right? Does that help?
We'll see when I get to put it in practice.
TJ, we have someone in the lobby.
Next. Any other questions on, well, I guess processing jobs or the other stuff that French showed? Yeah.
This was just from earlier, you mentioned the Metrc Knowledge Center is signing up for that. I was wondering where we do that.
So it's support.metrc.com.
And is that available for anybody?
Yes, yes. So like I said, you'll have to set up and it'll be tied to your login is. So that's why whenever you reach out support and give me your badge number, it'll tie to that. So that's where you'll be able to track anything you've
So an employee at a retail facility can sign up and use
Yes,
that
correct.
function?
Yes, yeah, we want to make it available to as many folks as possible, keep as much documentation as we can.
Thank you.
And again, the live chat feature is also great. So you can get someone right there. And then if you want to just submit a standard ticket, that's also available that way.
Will you have the reporting widget available for like monthly reconciliation on the processing jobs?
So like a processing job, like can report.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, I don't think we have anything at this time, but again, as TJ mentioned, to iterative process, we want to.
Can you actually, maybe this is, so we didn't show really at the job level what you can get. Maybe it would be worth showing that.
Yeah.
I think you got to share again.
Oh. So you can see the created packages that came out of here. So you can see all the inputs here. So you're able to export that information. And then also too, if you're looking here at the columns, you have the total weight that was in each of these. So there are some additional columns and features here. You can export those out. So if you have a big job and you just want to look at all your created packages, all your source, you can pull that out directly with this export feature. as well.
And then can you jump to the packages screen real quick? The other thing is, once you've created a package, it's going to have the source job that it came from. So you can see there, source PJ, that is the source that it came from. So that's like the production batch right now, but it's specific to the job. And then I think there's an issue right now that we're still trying to solve, where if the job is inactive, it doesn't carry through. But eventually, the way that will work is like source harvest, where, because right now, source production batch is only that immediate out of the production batch. And then if you repackage that, it disappears. This will carry through.
There's a source production batch field as well.
Yeah, but that's only at the, yeah. So there is still a source production batch field, but as soon as you repackage that package, that goes away. Now, with the source production job, processing job, that'll carry through like source harvest does.
So at the retail level, we'll be able to see what inputs went into a product.
Not input, so it shows, like, it'll show this, like DHO extraction 4623. It won't show, like, the retailer isn't gonna be able to see it, so it's like harvest, right? Like, I, as a retailer, can't see the plants that went into it, but I can see the source harvest. So same thing here, I can see the source production job name, but I won't be able to see, like, the trim that went into it, right? Those sorts of things. So, you know, I think there's other stuff that Metrc is doing on the reporting side that is going to make reporting more flexible. Right now, it's canned reports have to be created one by one, and there's a lot of software code to get it into Metrc. That's being, my understanding is, made more flexible. And so that, I think, is a way to get more of that data from things like this, even if they're not yet in the canned reports. Oh, and on the production job side, just one note, that stays with you. That's like a harvest for a producer. So even if you transfer out all the packages that have come out of that job is still there. And so you as a processor can see that information of what came into it, what came out of it, and the history and the notes and stuff. You can see that forever and always in your process job section of Metrc, even if you don't have possession of any of those packages.
All right. Any other questions?
Anyone? All right.
Screen share.
Do we have anything else to? That was it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other future functionality to share.
Okay. So yeah, let's do it this way. So now phase 2 of the meeting, what we do is we break up into 5 groups, and we are fully agnostic about how you do that. So sometimes it's you break up by license types, sometimes just whoever is next to you. I don't really care. You all are going to break up into 5 groups, and you're going to brainstorm stuff you would like to see in Metrc. Then when we move into phase 3 for the voting, those are going to be the same groups. And we'll go into more detail about what that is, but pick the groups that you want to both do the brainstorming with and do the voting with. So that can be your friends and family, or it can be strangers from another license type. I don't care. Self-organize. Get into your 5 groups around the room, and then we'll move into the second phase.
And just so you know, when you do the breakouts, we'll have voting coming by, little ballots, so you can vote on the next 2 meetings. So give you some dates in July and November, so plenty of notice.
We can probably download the reservation sign up and you can put that email. The registration. Yeah, so Okay.
We'll let it rain.
Oh, you already signed up for this? Okay. I asked for clarification. I don't know if it's the reservation email or the welcome email. Right? They are separate. Well, I thought I was clarified.
Half of them chose this week, half of them chose the others.
Somebody brought up snowflakes again, so I think we'll take that. I almost stood up and.
We'll hear about, no, this is what we hear about.
I almost did introduction go, I'm James. Can we put in, yeah, just to come back and react to snowflakes? Have
More snowflakes.
More snowflakes.
Snowflakes.
We're upgrading.
Yes.
So we actually need 5 groups for this to work, or some number divisible by 75. How about, what license type do we have to use? And what license type do we have? Really? What license type? Processing. Who wants to make a group of only producers? Okay. All right. So what was Okay, so groups. Okay, so we're not brainstorming quite yet. I'm just gonna explain a little bit. So I passed around, this is the list you're gonna choose from in the next segment. So it's not immediately important for you now, other than take a look and see what's already there, so that you don't spend time brainstorming that. I don't know, but I can make a configuration. Also, there's one missing on this. It's year-round snowflakes. So that's already done. We don't need to request that. Okay, so take a look at this. This is stuff that's already there for voting. And we're gonna, I would say spend 5 or so minutes kind of getting to know general pain points or suggestions. And then we'll actually see if I can do what I'm thinking at 10 o'clock. And go from there.
Do we need they wanted one more. So here, why don't, if we want to make more, we can for here, but everyone out here has.
Yeah.
You see a pattern developing?
Just the magic of painting in public.
No one knows it was me. Is this for a non-shared screen? Yeah. All right. Then both things are in place. Yeah, no, once we come into it, 25 minutes.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
There should be, because there was mom and daddy, and they were, yeah, they gave. Yeah, no problem.
I'll let Rick know.
Yeah, I just.
We're also working on like making like a golden here at Metrc.
You accepted the profile. Don't put save yet.
Oh, I have to wait until it's Sandbox OR, right?
And then adding the
It's open to one.
No, I didn't. Are you putting this at the beginning? What do Hey, change of plans, everyone. Hold on. All right, change of plans. Change of plans. We're gonna take a small interlude. Okay, we're gonna take a break from the brainstorming because I have something to show you. Okay.
We're gonna reconvene the brainstorming later. We're gonna take a break from that. Okay, so we have a surprise additional demo to do.
Is it a sandbox?
It is a sandbox. Okay, so this was an item that was oft requested. My favorite name for it is the flight simulator. Some of you might remember we had a user group member who was a retired pilot, and he talked about wanting the Metrc flight simulator. This is the Metrc flight simulator. So xp.metrc.com, you can go and we're the only state, so you select your state, and then you'd reserve your time that you want to do. So it's 1 hour blocks of time, and you can choose whichever time you want in the future. And it's like the hour ahead, right? So I think the first one available for me to select from is 12 today. So you're going to put in your license number, you're going to put in your login user ID, and then the email associated with that, and then where you want the registration email to go. So you'd fill all this out, and that is your hour block that you get in the sandbox environment. I'm not going to wait until 12 o'clock. So what I got was an email. It's going to be the same email you got when you got your account created for the first time. It's going to give you the link, you click it, you set up your password. Then you're going to get logged into the sandbox environment, and you're going to have one of each license type we have in the system. So you could, as a producer, see what a processor sees or a retailer sees or whatever. Or you, as a producer, could test some stuff out as a producer, or you could test out processing jobs as a processor. Sorry, what's that?
Can I put it in the sandbox of my point of sale for an API? Does it offer that type of functionality?
Yeah, if you're working with an existing integrator that has access to production, they will have access to the sandbox as well.
So you can see here that this user has the API key area, just like in the production site, and integrators in getting validated have access. This is what they use to get validated, the sandbox site. So they should have a sandbox key, which is their half, and you can get your API key for this user for this obviously 1 hour period, right? And that's your half. So you have to sync it up, but you can do it. So you have access to each of the license types, right? So I'll go to Red Processor.
Can you explain why it's like a reservation instead of just like an open? I think folks that maybe don't work in systems all the time, they're like, well, why isn't a sandbox be available all the time? Like why it's specifically?
Well, I mean, so I'll give my perspective, and then you all can give your perspective. There's 3,100 or so licenses in Metrc times the number of users. So that's a lot to try and have this be an open environment free for all. This is a sandbox site, so it also doesn't have the same server load, right? So it would not work to have the same number of people in the sandbox site as the regular site. I don't know if you all.
The primary reason is that you can't. This is a more sophisticated sandbox environment than you might see at another kind of software company. Whereas in this situation, you can actually move things. You can package this product across every step in the life cycle. That requires everything to be synchronized the right way at the right time. So in a sandbox, if somebody else were working in this similar sandbox and they're making adjustments, that would hinder your ability to see the full flow. And so it sounds restrictive, but actually gives you a much more robust experience than you would otherwise have in a sandbox.
Yeah, and this is, so it's creating these licenses for you for this session. So yeah, that's a great point, that it's creating your own personal sandbox within the sandbox almost. So it actually is creating also, you don't want to have to spend half an hour setting stuff up necessarily. So what it does is it gives you, in the same way that you have one license of each type, you also have one package of each type. And so you can, like, maybe you want more than 20 grams, adjust it up. I don't care because it's a sandbox, right? So you can adjust it up to like 500 pounds and then do whatever you want with it. And like Michael said, you can do everything in this environment that you can do in the production environment. So you can transfer, you can do processing jobs, you can do all of that stuff that you would want to do. So, you know, I don't know what happens if I click this button in production. This is where you can do it in a safe environment. Or I want to see what a retailer sees when I send them stuff. This is what you could do. You could actually replicate what a retailer sees for you sending them stuff. You could see it as a retailer. Right? Yeah.
Can you create a transfer manifest in one license type and receive it in another?
You
So that you can do the
can.
whole process?
Yeah, so you can create a transfer and you would select the licenses you would send to. Obviously, you're going to want to send it to the license you have, right? So like, you're not going to want to send it to this rando license because you're not going to be able to accept it. You're going to want to send it to, so I'm in 100 2A2. Oops.
Looks like you're locked in.
No, I don't. Yeah. Thanks. So you're going to want to. I don't know what are these all the ones I have? No, I don't think they are.
No.
So you're going to want to do the one that you have. What is that? 2A02.
That's a 0.
287. Yeah. You're going to want to pick one of these that I have over here to select from, right? So I'm in the processor, right? So let's do retailer. I'm going to just put some stuff. So the usual routes we see from you is what I just put. Okay. And then who did I just send it to? Retailer. So now I jumped over to the retailer who I sent it to, and this is the manifest that I just created. And I'd receive it in. I could see everything. As a retailer, I can receive it in, and then it also has rooms by default. So again, you don't have to set those things up. Now I go to packages. I don't know which one I just accepted, but this one, that's the one I just accepted. And now I can sell from it. So you can do everything in here that you could do in your production site. Yep.
Love it.
Is there a limit to how many hours you can register for?
So you can have one reservation at a time. So you, as soon as this ends, you could sign up for a new one.
Does it auto log you out?
It does, I assume, yeah. You don't get to just stay logged in for 3 hours, sorry. Nice try. No, so yeah, you can have one active registration at a time. So like if I sign up for 10 o'clock, I have to wait until my session ends to sign up for a new one.
That's per user, right?
Per user, yeah, per individual user. There is also, I think, a cap on how many people can use the hour at a time. But I don't know if you noticed, there's a lot of slots available because I kid you not, like 5 people have used this in the 3 years it's been there. So use this system. It is great. You all asked for it and it's now here. So you can go to xp.metrc.com and sign up now. The one wrinkle to that is I think if you reserve stuff for future days, it's still hit or miss whether the welcome email gets to you. But
do you have to sign for that welcome email every time then? Or can I, if I like sign up for?
yeah, because it's creating a brand new
Okay,
user.
yes,
So it'll give you a welcome to Metrc every time your hour opens up or like a few minutes before. And then you're going to go in, you're going to accept the terms and conditions, create your password, everything like you normally would do. And this isn't my usual user. This is this demo user that was created for this specific hour. Any other questions on this? Okay. That's what I wanted to show you. So now back to the brainstorming. So we'll do that until 10:30 and then we'll see where we're at.
So we play for receipts, so the rent from that they create,
Just.
instead of having to go into the sales tab.
So you can take it.
Yeah, so that's.
You can only have one, you can't get another one.
Yes, I do. I've dealt with like, we upgrade the Vista.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks for having
Oh, can we pass out the little?
Here you go. Set that one in, every single person I have in there. They've done
So there are. That's the process. What I did, now it's
share this with Sam.
I got brought up 3 times.
Well, there's no such a function, you can push them around.
Maybe it's just build
Once you reach out to
I just need the file.
We just got no, maybe
I got Dave. There's still some. That's the one. So she was asking about it. She was asking about it. She was like, "So is it true that we can do batch check?" And I'm like, "Thank you for reminding me."
All right, so I'd like to reconvene at 10:35, so 8-ish minutes. So get your top 2 or 3 things per group and choose a spokesperson.
Wait, did I? Are we logged in?
Oh.
We're staying down.
When we come back and leave it Tuesday, but it'll be 20 sometimes.
Somehow the news, that's kind of what I want to do. I mean, there's two kinds of.
Sold out.
All right, 2 more minutes, wrap up, 2 minutes. This is.
Well, this is where the ideas are, and then, yeah, the voting is like the trading and documents and stuff, so.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yes. Thank you. Give it to James.
Okay, we're gonna reconvene. All right. So everyone needs to have a spokesperson to report out and their top 2 or 3 items. Or you can do it standing in solidarity. Again, I'm fully agnostic. Okay. Which brave group wants to go first? Otherwise, we'll start here. All right, let's start here. Okay, so the way this works, again, we're not voting. This is, you are adding stuff to the list that you'll be able to vote on next time. Okay, so you're gonna say what you want. I'm gonna ask questions to make sure I understand what you want and also that you understand what you want. And then we're gonna go from there. Okay, actually, sorry, before I almost forgot again. So batch tagging. What quiz? When does batch tagging go into effect? When can you do January 1? What year? 2024. January 2024. So you all know, I assume, that we passed a rule on batch tagging. We still have a lot to do to make batch tagging happen. There's obviously the system side, there's the contract stuff, and I will tell you the state process to amend contracts is not an overnight thing. So we need time to on-ramp it and then roll it out. There's also things like, how do I get all these individually tagged plants into batches? So there's things like that still to figure out. January 1 is when it kicks into effect. So you all still should do your tags as normal this year. Don't, buy 10% of the tags you usually would because you will run out. So January 2024 is when our rule starts batch tagging. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, perfect. Okay, what do you want?
We had 2 major buckets. They're for 2 different types of licenses, which is why I'm not going to rank them because we find them to be equally as important for different parties. I'm going to start with retail sales receipt edits are a pain in the butt. They've become a little bit more of a pain in the butt with recent changes. Predominantly, the time it takes for a new package to not be gray and offer us the ability to select what our other tag is going to be.
So do you mean the lookup to select the package?
Correct.
Is
The one that you want to replace for the misrank, right?
got it. Okay.
That's part of it. And the secondary part of that is if you've sold 20 items on a sales receipt and those items have sold through and been zeroed out and finished, now you have to unfinish all 20 of them before you can update the sales receipt. That's a lot of work.
So if there's a way to adjust a ticket without having to unfinalize
Every single one of those
every other items
packages.
that are being modified.
Because they're not being modified, they're still finished. We're not changing the fact that they're finished. We're not selling from them. There's no reason for us to have to unfinish it and then refinish it. And that shows in our history as well. And then the second big bucket is for anybody that transfers product from facility to facility. When it comes to a transfer mistake, for instance, someone sent 2,000 units and that is adjusted at the time of receival with the manifest, it doesn't go back into the source package. It doesn't go back into the other originating facilities or originating licenses database, which creates a really large discrepancy that's really difficult to find on the originating facility side of it.
So that we're going to get some requests that are, I hear you, I recognize what you're saying, but we're not going to do that. And so this is probably one of them. So that is one where, I mean, it's pretty intentional that you receive what you actually got. That's different sometimes than what was sent.
I'm not complaining on it from the retail side of it, but on the side of the originating facility, it creates a discrepancy that's really difficult to determine where it occurred because once a package is transferred out, we have no history of that package
Right.
to determine how much we have transferred out.
Yeah. Okay.
So that is in direct correlation with 17.
A historical marker.
Sounds like everybody cares about that.
not allowed to accept partial
No,
package?
because if a package was shipped incorrectly, it's not considered a partial package. Partial package is considered if a pound of weed was sent to you and you only want half a pound of it.
So I can add a little bit to that. Part of the problem is when you're transferring custody of that package, right? So it's not accurate to say that whoever you sent it to can adjust your inventory.
We're not trying to adjust the inventory though, we're just.
Well, I think the idea though is that if they send 200, but the package has 2,000, there's nowhere for that 1,800 to go because
And
that package
would it
came to
be-
you.
Would it be probable to ask for another tab for discrepancies, which allows us to accept the discrepancy and assign it back to source package or a new tag?
So I don't think the process is as straightforward, but what we can probably talk a little bit more about is giving the origin facility more visibility into those adjustments. So there is some visibility. You do get a notification today that says package was adjusted when it was accepted. I don't recall if it actually tells you what the differences are. It might not, it might just tell you that it happened. So you can call the receiver and ask him what they actually adjusted.
But then you're also counting on their honesty.
Oh, you're counting on their honesty if they're inputting the number as well.
Yeah, but that's not. We can actually.
Yeah.
This is like that,
Sure,
that mismatch.
I'd love to. That was all we had.
And so just also to clarify, when we said rank order, you don't have to choose between this is 1, this is 2. We just want your top 2 or 3. So that is exactly what we were looking for. Thank you.
Oh.
And there's a third.
Each
Of
for
course.
each seed.
Each of eaches, yep,
Yeah.
okay. Alright. Each of eaches, okay, yeah, we'll take that back and think through it of what that might mean, but yeah, each of eaches, okay.
It'll be $7,000, everybody.
All right, are we going this way or this way? All right, middle group there of the 2 producers.
When you open Metrc, the default number of lines is 20 lines. Always, always, always need more than 20 lines. Would it be possible to have the default be 500 lines?
So this has come up, and I will just say, we hate the spinning wheel of death, and Metrc is too slow. And give us all the lines all the time, kind of conflict with each other, right? Because if everyone is loading 500 of everything at a time, that is going to, and there's, like I said, 3,100 licenses times the number of users.
So more servers. Next
Touche.
is, when I'm combining packages, and every place where you're adding additional lines in Metrc except for combining packages allows you to select how many additional lines you want to add. But when you're combining source packages, it's just the plus. And sometimes I'm combining 20 to 50 packages and I have to hit plus. So I'd like to be able to select how many additional source package lines
Give me 1
to
second.
add.
Hold on. Okay, so I'm in packages here.
So, yeah, so there on the right side under package 1,
I
the
see.
contents.
So I think it is there, but you need to,
I don't want multiple new
It's on the
packages.
right-hand
I want
side.
this.
oh,
right
you
there.
want this
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah, I want to be able to
Got it.
select how many lines of that I can add.
Got it. Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay. X contents on right hand side of the
And then the last one is regarding transfers. The rejection reasons, I feel like anytime we have transfers rejected, none of the rejection reasons are pertinent. And I was wondering if it would be possible to add an other reason with a required note. Because I would say 90% of our rejections are because the intake manager isn't in that day. And it seems like all of the rejection reasons are, as a producer, things that we've messed up, like incorrect weight, incorrect chain of custody, problems with the product, but it's never any of those.
Oops. So rejection reasons are done by us. So if you have specific suggestions of some of those things that aren't covered that you would like to be covered, then we can, I would say, send your list to marijuana.cts@oregon.gov and we'll take a look.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get in to
something as simple as
see
an other would be.
if, so I really dislike.
Well, then the required note.
Yeah,
Not optional, but
can we
required.
do a required note on rejection? Okay, all right. So I'm not gonna put that here because that's an OLCC thing.
Okay.
So send us your suggestions.
And then the other thing you just told me I should just mention is the Sigma bug on the
Right.
template on packages, not
Auto sum?
not traveling down when you have multiple packages.
Yep.
It would be nice to have
Every
that
single time.
work.
Yeah.
It used to work, right?
It
Yeah.
used to work.
Yeah.
It did used to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So we have 3 different points and I thought one of us would discuss each one of them, it's better.
Go for it.
July 1st, we had that R&Ds need to be submitted. And now we're having a lot of issues with people doing R&Ds after their package has been
Yeah, and
test
it
passed.
sets it to not
I
submit.
know it's being worked
Yep.
on, but now aspergillus is coming down the way and it's starting to create bigger issues because dispensaries are getting, oh, the package turned to submitted, or everyone's kind of facing this thing. So it kind of made us think about this bubble that in a perfect world, to feed off that thought that, you know, it wouldn't turn to package. What if when they got their tests, like we were saying, if I just put a potency in, the package turned to test pass. If I put an R&D in, the package turned to test pass. In a perfect world, if the appropriate tests were in there, they would turn to test pass when all of the required tests that were needed for that appropriate package would show. And also on that, as a wholesaler, to keep it super detailed, they would have access to the source tag, they would have access to all the tests, but right now, there's not a visibility for tests. It doesn't show
When we say compliance,
compliance.
Yeah, so I will say that this is very difficult. This would be very difficult to do for a couple reasons. One is, like I talked about earlier, some tests are contingent on certain things, right? Like it has to be tested when these conditions are met, but not these conditions. And the system doesn't always know when something has or hasn't met those conditions. The other thing also is OHA's testing rules, especially the new ones, are, you know, harvested after X date, processed after X date, like those sorts of things. So it gets really, really complicated to build out that logic. Also, like state by state, because every state is going to be very different on that, right? Of what does it mean for it to be test passed, right? So that's really difficult to get that logic right, and frankly, not set you all up for false positives or false negatives, right?
Well, at least for the R&D aspect, because right now that's becoming a huge problem.
Yeah, so and on that, there's 2 things. One is there is the bug that if you test it, it sometimes working? Can people hear us?
I can hear you and see you.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, we're back in business. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna highlight this one. Oops. Oh. We're getting some feedback from online. If you all could mute. Thank you. All right, I'm going to highlight this one. This one we'll take away as a request for sure. No. Turns the charm, maybe? Okay. What else you got?
So the other thing that we have, I heard them say seed each, but this is kind of a big misunderstanding in the industry too. So retail doesn't sell one seed ever. We sell usually packs of 5 or 10. So the producer should be able to distinguish how many seeds are in the
Yeah,
pack.
that's what this is. That's what each of each is.
We were wondering, we didn't hear the whole seed story, so I was like, I wonder if.
Yeah, so the way I'm interpreting the each of eaches is when you do an each, you can say the unit weight of this is X. So each of eaches would be you, in the same way that when you create an item, you can choose whether it's weight-based or each-based. When you say how much per each it is, you'd have weight-based and unit-based options. So when you create an item, you'd be able to say this item is 1 gram per unit or 5 units per unit.
So 5 seeds per package is in
Correct.
compliance?
That would be each of each. Well, no, this is a request to add to Metrc. Each of each
Oh,
is.
okay, it is. They added it up there. Okay. Perfect.
Yep, that's what this is right here. Each of each is.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the other ones that we have, and it's kind of like a simple, we feel it's simple, is trade samples. So like as a producer, we can make, anywhere between 15 to 20 trade samples per test package. But they get lost in Metrc in the tabs as we're creating pound packs and half pound packs and pre-roll packages and stuff. And the spinning wheel of death is just not a friend to any of us. And so being able to have a tab that we can just click on and see all trade samples available, and instead of having to search through X number of
So
different
I
packages.
think I have
Retail
given
level
you
above that as well.
And also on that is
Yeah.
like a rejection tab.
Hold on 1 second before we move on to that. So I don't know how many people know about this, but if you click the 3 dots and go to columns, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's not
Right.
on. And trade sample is one of them. And so you can, where did it go?
Next to that.
Trade sample. So I'm filtering for all my trade samples, right there.
Okay.
It's so easy, it's already done.
So a reconciliation button would be helpful too.
What do you mean by reconciliation?
Reconciliation, when you're counting how much flour is in your store, you're always like adjusting 0.2 on all your flour. So if you can have like a reconciliation button to adjust all the flour, I know you can filter it to all the flour, but to reconcile it, meaning just to have all the flour in one as you're going through and reconciling the amounts that are in the store. Does that make sense?
So what you?
So if you're counting for inventory purposes, you're always having different grams when you're weighing. So when you go through and do your weights and stuff to adjust them to reconcile the whole system to that weight. That it's
But how
going to
would the
be.
system know where to assign that weight?
Well,
Because it's package
you put the
level.
weight into the package, but then when you reconcile it, it goes to that weight.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you'd have a view where you'd put in the weights that they are, and then
Right.
you'd push the button,
Right,
and then it would auto.
reconcile it to be, yes,
Well, let me show you what's there now, and you tell me.
okay. I kind of filtered for the categories when I'm doing it.
Yeah, so like, let's say we do quad rate. And let's do quantity greater than 0.
I guess it would help. to
So
know
I
when
highlight
the
all
inventory is
these,
done.
I do adjust, and then I can put in what the new quantity is.
Oh.
So this was a user group item from a while ago. It used to be
Okay.
that you would just put in how much it's going up or down by, but you can now put in what the actual quantity is, and the
Right.
system will do the math.
Except
And-
it'll give you like 13 decimal places.
Sorry, say that.
It'll give you a decimal place nightmare when you put in the actual weight out to like 20 decimal places and you have to delete it down to 3 every time.
You mean on the, how much it's, so if I
Yeah,
put in a new,
adjusting flour specifically, like say there's 137 grams and you want to make it 135, it'll make like a weird chain of that. Does anyone ever experience
Yeah,
that?
Yes.
when there's a decimal in the quantity already. So
Right.
if you try on package number 2, maybe that'll show it. There.
oh, I see, so it's
It
just.
goes back way
oh,
too
that's a
many and
lot
then
of-
it doesn't let you adjust.
That actually causes issues on API integrated point of sales
Wow.
too. Because you can't adjust something and the point of sale system can't find it because it's so small.
So here's what I'm gonna make this request, decrease the amount of precision on number of decimal places. Adjusted by. There we go.
So can we go back to trade samples real quick?
Yeah.
The reason why
Hold on,
we-
we're still talking. Yes,
The
trade
reason we
samples.
wanted to get the trade samples out of our metric is because there's so many of them, and if they could just put them off to the side, when we're looking at our inventory, they're all over the place when you're going through your store's inventory or your production inventory, they're just in there
It just
everywhere.
adds to your loading time.
Right,
So does this though not, so
so you can.
the
you can
ability to
filter 'em,
filter.
but that's-
Try to filter
But
that
that's if
it
you're
doesn't
looking
show
for
you the
trade
trade
samples
sample.
specifically.
Right.
And we
If
just
you-
want the bud to show up, but
Right,
no trade sample.
right.
You
Because
can-
just
you
So
can
you did
filter
it so that it
the-
was yes, if you do no, does it give us just the bud
Yeah.
and no trade sample?
Yes.
That's what, yeah, that's what I just did, yeah.
So filter no, and then
Oh,
filter
no
for.
trade samples, okay.
Yeah,
Oh.
filter for which.
So you uncheck the box, that's the problem.
Well, yeah, so you have to go in here, columns, and here, and while I'm in here, there's also, this was another user group item from a while back.
Okay,
You can set, so when I do this, if I go to another computer, or I go home or whatever, this view is not gonna be the same.
okay.
But user profile, I believe, save grids remotely. If you click that, that's gonna sync to every computer you log in from. So now when I go into packages, if I log in with that computer, whatever, all of these that I've just set are now gonna be either visible or invisible depending on what I check or uncheck.
Okay,
And you can export this grid right into Excel. I don't know if anyone
okay.
does that, but it's great for getting into CSV format and something.
Okay? Problem solved?
Yep.
Ish, enough to not waste days on it? Okay. All right. Oh, and I wasn't sharing my screen. Sorry for people online. Okay. Next group.
All right, so this one is kind of related to the test pass thing. Obviously, there's a lot of complication around, whether something is test passed or not. But maybe for transferring material, there can be some sort of easy indicator that, hey, this is untested, or this has these tests attached to it. Or
Yeah, so there is it's something we have not implemented in Metrc yet. But other states have, where if you, I'm not 100% sure I'm going to explain this right, but when you go in here, it actually is here. So lab test batches will actually show, again, I'm not 100% sure exactly how it works, but basically on our side, we configure, these are the things it's supposed to be tested for. And the lab test batches will say like whether or not it was for that set of things. It's tricky though, because it's not, number one, it's not tied to logic. Like it's going to be test passed even if only one of the things was tested for. Second, it's going to, like, we would configure it as usable requires, you know, XYZ thing, like requires microbiologicals, heavy metals, those sorts of things. But there's going to be grandfathered stuff that doesn't have to be tested for that. And it's going to show it as not having been tested for that. And retailers or whoever is still going to have to know, you know, based on the label, based on Metrc, when was it harvested? Was that something that had to have been tested for? Those sorts of things. So that is something that we're trying to figure out the best way to implement it, because so that it makes the most sense and doesn't, you know, cause a retailer to reject something they don't need to, or that sort of thing, right?
Okay.
That would also come into play when they're requesting testing of a lab. When they send it, if I understand this right, they can say, this is the stuff I want it to be tested for. And then the lab, when they get the sample, it preloads those tests. Does it have any relationship to the testing status? Like, do they have to put those results
So
in?
the request that was made earlier about testing in progress until everything is tested actually is supported by that.
Oh, okay. So you're saying if someone selects the batch that it should be tested for, it won't go to test pass until all those results are entered.
The
But
complexities that you talked about still exist.
yeah, the complexities still exist. And also, if you as a producer select more than you need to have tested for, congratulations, you have a tested in progress package. So I mean, that's the other side of this, right? Like, you have to know what you're asking for, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and just some indication to, especially retailers when they get packages. Like,
Yeah, I think like from the retail end is, we can get sent packages that were untested, and then it's up to us. So I realize, you know, you might want to send an untested package to a wholesaler or a processor, but something that basically, like, the red flag is like, are you sure you want to add this untested package to a retail manifest? Because that ends up, you know, maybe the person who accepted it didn't catch it, and then I'm getting a phone call saying, oh, hey, there's untested product on the floor. And I'm like, what? Right? And I don't know if you straight up want to prevent that from happening to a retail location, but a sort of double check, are you sure you want to do this? Would be nice.
Okay, I'm gonna. Are you sure? Going to sender for untested product going to specify. Okay. Anything else?
Yes, this has more to do with edible type products, but I'll let the edible person.
Yeah, I was hoping to expand, you know, like a return feature, or I don't want to say recall, but like, I guess the specific example is we make popcorn, and it will have it won't be harmful for people, but it will get stale.
Yeah.
And to do the recall of that is really difficult. Like, we have to go through every single invoice we ever made and find every retailer that has that popcorn on their shelf and pull it. I was hoping with some kind of feature that on our side, we could do like this voluntary return thing, or that I can go to the mother batch or even the processing job after the feature, and I can, like, let's say maybe there's something that went wrong with the batch, or it was just stale. I would like that we could just hit recall, and it would ping those packages, that everything that's from to the retailer, so that it could just make that communication easier to get those products back and destroyed.
Can I ask a question? Is that important because you guys are offering credit and you guys have to be able to filter how to give credit to the retailer, or Because the way that I'm hearing it, isn't that the responsibility of the retailer to be wasting out the product when it's expired or past best by date?
It should be, but the product then still, sometimes it will be past, 6 months and it will still be being sold and they're not paying attention
And then
to.
it's impacting your reputation.
Exactly. It really comes to
I
the
just need to
reputation part of this.
understand.
No, for sure. It's really reputation of this, yeah, because we don't want people, when we all evaluate, hey, this is a product that shouldn't be sold anymore. Again, it's not harmful to people, it just is not the quality we want. We want that returned easily. And right now, I'm the one responsible for going through it. We use Leak Link, we have to go through every Leak Link transfer.
Do your retailers because anything
Yeah, we work with them on like if they destroy it or we have a process of destroying it that we feel confident with. And so we try to get it back for them and make it easy as possible by like transfer giving them new product, just trading them out and giving them credit or something like that.
Well, we get, yeah, none of my vendors ever asked for stuff back, or we just.
Yeah, whatever's easiest is what we usually go to.
Okay, got it. So I'm gonna expand it beyond processing and include harvest just because, but the idea being, so we can do what admin holds on our side and it flags it and keeps it in the four walls. What you're talking about is different but related, where you would be able to flag a processing job or harvest batch and initiate a voluntary return to flag for everyone in possession of a downstream product, hey, and maybe notes or something of here's the thing that's wrong. Something.
Instead of red flag, it could be yellow.
Yellow instead of red.
Out of curiosity, why don't they just do something where we just do where we can't see it, custody chain all the way through? So like as a producer, you sell it, you find out, you sell it to a wholesaler gives it 10 stores.
Because that's not your inventory, so that's why, is the short answer. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Yes, there was one more. With regard to laboratory test results, occasionally we find the need to send corrected results to a package. I had to do one yesterday. I'll give an example. In our LIMS system, we had the wrong sample tag put in. So when our LIMS system sent it to Metrc and sent the wrong results to the wrong package, I had to manually go in, put the right results to the right package. Obviously added some sort of explanatory note saying what happened, but there's no obvious indication to say retailers when they're trying to compare the label to what is in Metrc that this is the corrected result.
Yeah. So we have the ability recently-ish in the last year or so to void on our side individual results. So we exercise that in certain circumstances, but not others. So the correction for that is, and you probably already are working with the CTS team, but working with the CTS team, and in those circumstances where we would void something, we would void it. So that is something we still keep kind of behind the curtain to exercise discretion.
That makes sense, because obviously there could be, nefarious reasons for changing results. But I'm talking about times where it's just, there is a corrected result, and it would be nice to have a checkbox on our side. Hey, we're putting in the corrected result. It doesn't get rid of the other results. It's just so that somebody looking at it can see that these are corrected results as opposed to the original result.
I see. So you're not talking about deleting an older field. You're just, instead of only using the notes field, you're talking about flagging a new result.
Right. And possibly requiring the notes field if you're flagging as a corrected result.
I'm excited for the rainbow flags.
Okay, got it. Okay. Last one, right? Last group?
Yep.
Okay.
The first one was on the inventory look back report. It currently doesn't have the quantities, so it has the packages list.
Yeah. So you're talking about the one that's like the point in time?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's not possible. That's not possible to reconstruct the quantity it was at a given date. Because Metrc is more of like a cash flow type accounting, right? Where you're saying, I adjusted, I sold, whatever. So to rewind time and say it was this quantity, you have to reconstruct every single event. that happened to that package in the intervening time.
So from an accounting perspective, if you want to know your inventory on the last day of the month, you're gonna have to pull your packages report
On the
on
last
that
day.
day. Actually, the next day before business. Right. That's nice.
All right, next one was the.
Womp womp.
On the, so currently you click the and you're searching for a package and do the ends with. And we're wondering if there's a way to get just a search field always at the top that just goes straight to the ends with on the package. 'Cause like we're talking like 90% of the time we go up there to search, it's just for a package. And if we could just skip the clicking the going down to the ends with and just always had a field up there at the top.
Control F in the browser.
Well, that's if you have the package though.
In your
There's
20
only like 20 visible.
Yeah.
We can pull it out if I wonder.
Search field outside of grid to filter. Is that the idea? So you'd have just like a tag search up here or
Yeah,
something?
exactly. Yep. It doesn't have to be super complex, but it just is tied to the end of it.
Two, three separate. Got it.
All right, and then, I guess we'll have one more. Going back to what he was saying, so I know if a package isn't in your inventory anymore, it's not your inventory, so you can't see the history. Is there a way that you can, this might have been something we brought up in the previous one, but see a snapshot? So if I go to outgoing manifest.
Yeah, it's right here.
It's already on there, okay.
Package history while is in your position frozen upon outgoing transfer and available for drill down. So that's here. It's a big one.
All of our favorites
All right.
We have one more.
Okay.
A more extensive adjustment drop down.
Yeah, so that's related to this. So rejections, adjustments, lab tests, all that stuff is us. So if you have specific things that you'd like to appear in the adjustment reason, it's going to be the same as what I said about rejection. Send it to marijuana.cts@oregon.gov, explain what it is and why, and we will take it under consideration. Okay. So now this is either the best part or the worst part, depending on what you think. We're going to move into the voting period. So same lists you have, these are now what you're selecting from. So the way this works, 5 groups, you each have 15 days. You can allocate your groups 15 days however you want. So you could say, we want to buy item number 3. You get to do that because you have 15 days. You could say, we want to buy item 1 and 2 and then allocate our leftover 5 days to item X. Or we want to allocate all 15 of our days to item 35, and then you're going to need other groups to pool their time together to get it. So once in sum of all the groups, the number of days allocated to an item meets the LOE, you as a full user group have bought that item.
So
Yes.
with 5 groups, we have.
75 days.
So we have to have everyone in the room agree if one of the.
On one of these,
75.
on one of these very big.
I will buy number 17. What is it?
Oh, that is how we do it. Before we get started, any questions? Okay, so spend 10 minutes and then we're going to report out on how you allocate your days. And then we'll see what you got. And then we're just going to keep going round and round until all the days are done.
No, this is what.
Hey. Sorry, what was that? Yeah, if you go out the door.
Or I'll be all my coming in the morning and I do green all night. Yeah, it's hard. On a weekend.
Hey, Allie or Tristan or anyone, so what I want is this highlights when they hit. How do I do that? This is a sum of the days. I want the row to highlight when the allocated days hits the LE days.
Oh, so,
But I can never get.
oh, it's equal.
What do I do? I can do.
Equals C5 equals 5 equal or what equals C5 and then you can do your formatting. No, 5.
I have
Give you a
this.
yes.
I know I have it.
So it might There you go, and then you can class.
Perfect.
No, I try to do that. End up watching YouTube tutorial. And then as long, I think as long as you don't dollars, it'll apply that formula all the way down for you. I get confused on that.
All right, 3 more minutes and we're gonna reconvene. Are we done? Okay. Does everyone agree that we're done? Does anyone disagree that we're done? Okay, we're done. All right. Okay. Coming back. Thank you. Perfect. All right. Why don't we start with this group? Because I feel like, oh.
I think we combined, I think it's 3.
It's happening. It's happening. All right, what is it?
We tag team this.
2017 and.
Yeah, we're advanced 5. Yeah, then they combine.
Hold on. So 20.
So we're given all the 20. Our 15 points to 20.
Okay. You're group 1. I don't know what group you are. You're group 1. Okay.
We're also giving our 15 to 20.
Okay.
We are giving our 15 to 17.
Shoot, I should freeze these. Hold on one second, sorry.
10 to 17.
Hold on. This one? 17. 17, sorry, group 3 is
So-
giving 5 days?
No, we're giving all 15 to 17.
15, okay,
And then group 4 is
Okay.
doing 10 to 17 and 10 to
And
5 to 20.
Okay. And then what's group 5 doing?
Number 5.
Are all 15 to 5.
Okay, what do we choose? I have no idea what I chose. You only. Okay, your user group items are view only in employees, transfers, and sales. Transferred tab in the packages table allow users to view all packages that have been transferred out on a web page and not just transfers report like currently. Column format would be very similar to the in-transit. Oh, okay, yep. And admin items, make it so you can click in an existing item and duplicate it, modify. Okay, so copy, paste, and edit. Okay. Cool. You got it. So in terms of what happens next, so is James, where's James? Is James here? No. Sorry. Metrc James. Okay. Yeah. So do you all want to talk about how this fits into changes you all are implementing on development cycle to create more predictability for what happens in terms of releases?
Sure, so. I'll go to the.
Everybody's got a turn around.
So let me tell you a little bit about some changes we're doing inside Metrc now. As Metrc continues to grow in more states, we have more states on board using our products, and they all, like you, their user groups, and they're making requests, and we're trying to accommodate as best we can all these requests. A lot of good ideas, and we're always looking to make Metrc, our platform, better. So what we've done is we've taken our dev team, and our dev teams are now smaller, focused development teams. So we have teams that are just focused on doing work for the different states. So as the requests come in from the states, now we have teams that are focused from a quality standpoint, from a development standpoint, from a management standpoint. So we're hoping that we can handle more requests that way. However, when we receive the request, we want to be thoughtful that we're providing enough support for all the different states. And so we have a new method for estimating the work. So when it comes in, we don't look at it and just say, that's 15 days, yeah, we'll take care of that. We have a new estimating process where we really break down these requests into the little units of work that have to happen. And we look at those and we give it a score and we say, okay, this thing is going to take what we call a sprint. A sprint is 2 weeks of effort. And we do so 2 sprints a month and so on. So we figure out how many sprints we need to accomplish any one of those tasks. And then once we know how much that's going to be, we have a roadmap kind of for the team. And we say, okay, what are we doing this year? Well, we got to do this, we got to do that, we're going to do this. And we work with the state. What's their priority, right? Like right now, TJ's big priority for this year is getting, batch tagging done. So we're going to work on batch tagging, okay, but then where is your request from today going to fit in? And then we try to fit in, well, maybe we can get it into this sprint, maybe we can get it into that sprint. Now work with TJ, like, I'm going to do this, but what do you think? How's that going to affect your priority? The idea being that working with the states, they help us set the priority of the work we're going to deliver. What's the most important thing? What's the most impactful thing that we need to deliver? So we're going to work more closely with the state. The other thing is, rather than just make a generalization and say, I'm going to get this done by the next user group, I now have a much more accurate picture of the effort and the work that needs to be done. So I can, when I come to you and I tell you, I'm not going to do it by the next user group meeting, but I might get it done by, whatever, September, let's say. At least I know that I have a realistic chance of actually doing it in September. So I'm not going to tell you today when we'll do that. But when I do come back and I say, okay, we've got a hole in our schedule, we're going to put it in that hole and it'll be done X, will actually be done when we say it's going to be done. So we're trying to handle more requests. We're trying to be more thoughtful about how we estimate them and the level of effort that's going to go into them. And we're trying to be more thoughtful when we come back to the groups or we come back to the state and say, hey, we're going to get that done for you. We're going to get it done this time. Any questions? But I will say, look, I've been with Metrc now about a month and a half and still learning the product. But these user groups are really important because this is the feedback we need to make sure that we're not only that we're improving our product, but we're improving it in areas that are actually impactful and make a difference to you and the jobs you do. So we keep learning and we keep asking for this kind of feedback. So it's super helpful and I really appreciate you all and the input that you've given us.
Is there ever the possibility that one of these things that we ask for is already implemented in another state and it's an easy fix?
Could very well be. Could very well be, right? So we take this back. Because I've got a master list where I look at all the states and everything they've asked for and things that are coming down the pipe. We also have our program managers like Brent, and he's constantly working with TJ, and Brent's got visibility to the things that other states are asking. And so those are the kind of things that we all talk about. Oh yeah, Colorado wants that, or Maine also wants that, and that's how we can bring it together, and that actually helps amplify the priority on something, because one thing is I'm just building something for Oregon, but if I know I'm building it for Oregon and Oklahoma and California and everybody else wants it, that's even a better investment of my time and resources is to get that done, because I'm going to really have an impactful change.
So one other piece related to this, we've been doing this same method we just did today since 2017 or whatever it was when we did the first user group. So they're, a lot of these are legacy requests with a way of estimating the LOE and then a way of selecting them. So there, for these ones that were just brainstormed, there may be a different way for these ones and maybe some of these legacy ones that it changes what it means to estimate the level of effort, right? And moving forward, how this all goes. So the most important thing for me was to get back together for the first time in 3.5 years, right? And get back into some degree of normalcy for this stuff. So you all gave us your dates. We're gonna schedule them out. And we're gonna aim for 3 meetings this year, and we're gonna try and get back into that same routine, 3 or 4 user group meetings a year. But still sort of TBD is with the changes Metrc's making to create more consistency and predictability in what is going out, it might have, trickle down effects here. So stay tuned as we figure it out. Right? Yes.
So some of these items that have, the 75-day LEs, they're all items that 1 or 10 of us want. But to get the whole group on board, is this kind of a thing where, we'll go through this list, we'll add to this list, and each meeting will pick a few things, and then with the potential goal of one day having the list be one item.
The list is never going to be one item. Considering that we added like 15 or so, it's never going to go down.
So I'm just wondering what the likelihood of us ever being able to implement these 75-day items. Because getting a group this large to agree on one item.
So to take a couple examples, or at least one example. So there's some things here where these would be like a fundamental rewiring of how Metrc works. This is a particular request with a particular use case, but it's possible there are other ways to meet this use case that would not be 75 days. So all that to say, there are, this literal request is 75 days and may never be selected.
Could you do 15 on this meeting and then add another 15?
No, they don't. No, they don't. You don't bank your time. It's use it or lose it. But there might be things that someone, instead of phrasing it with this very specific way of doing it, there might be other ways to accomplish the same thing. With the use case being, as I scroll through the grid, I don't want to have to highlight something and then go all the way back to the top. So there might be other ways to frame it as a use case like that could be easier, more accomplishable. And then suddenly it's not a 75-day request, it's a 15-day request, and you still meet 80% of the pain or whatever, right? So that would be my recommendation, is thinking for some of these bigger items too, what are ways to slice it up potentially or reframe it and approach it a different way.
Could you do that helpful just to show that's going?
Go for it.
So, hi. So Metrc, most of you have used Metrc for a pretty long time. It's gonna hold me, I think.
It should.
So you've used Metrc for a really long time, generally as a requirement, something required, not desired. And so that's not great. And so we certainly recognize that this is a really new industry, even though you live in it, it feels like it's been going on for a lot longer than it really has, and at least in the legal space. And so, there's really not even Colorado, which I think was not so far ahead of you, has significant operations for greater than a decade. And so there's no one else really on the planet that kind of does this. And I think track and trace seems a little bit more simplistic in terms of, we're moving items along the supply chain, and it really is a massive genealogy, and I think a lot more complex than it always meets the eye. And so much of Metrc for a very long time has been about trying to meet these requests, these specific items that turn into very long lists to try and keep up. And checking those boxes and things coming at us, because as you're learning the industry, as everybody's learning the industry, Metrc is also trying to adapt. Unfortunately, over time, that has come at the cost of, I think, performance. That's my biggest annoyance. So we hired a new CTO with the express purpose to kill the spinning wheel. I gave him a mandate to 6:30. I can't commit to that right now because I just don't think we've seen quite enough. And there's a lot of new things that sort of, every time you look behind the corner or you pick up a rock, I'm sure in your world, you find new stuff as well. So while I think we're making progress and I think the speed and the performance of Metrc has increased slightly, we're very committed to it being a seamless operation and something that's meaningful for you and your businesses. My goal is to eliminate everything that's on this list. I do agree with TJ that every time you ask for a data point, it just causes 10 more questions. So it's really hard to eliminate all the items on the list. In terms of us trying to expand, late last year we brought in some additional investment. Metrc is basically a break-even business. And so to try and get into a place where we're have more opportunity and can kind of restructure our organization in a way to best support you, we were able to get some additional support and bring in some different folks that have been there and done that in similar ways at a larger scale. We've had some really special people in Metrc that have done great things that have unfortunately been spread far too thin, and some of those folks are here today. But we've also brought in a number of new folks, new CTO, a new oversight in terms of kind of boots on the ground leadership, and being able to be in your community, in your market, to be able to speak with you and speak with any of your peers if you're having problems, if you have ideas, so that we can work with you on a day in and day out basis. James is also new. As you evaluate this long list and realize that everybody everywhere has a really long list, we come up where one request that might be 75 here, and I don't know exactly how that stuff's calculated, but is on the same list somewhere with or a similar list somewhere else with a similar type of request. But if we tweak it a little bit, we actually get those 75s down to something smaller. We can make it work for everyone. There's also inherent limitations with every kind of product. So as we continue to look at evaluating opportunities to enhance the UI, some of these issues that are just difficult right now in the UI, when we make investments to kind of overhaul the UI, some of the views, some of the ability to filter and sort and see things in a different way, they're able to be sort of much easier if we just kind of restructure the foundational elements of that. There's a really strong commitment to this, and so I can imagine if you came up with all these different items and you see like, okay, we're going to get 3 done, and there's 100 more. I imagine that can feel a little bit disheartening, and that's not really. I don't want you to have that sense. I understand that Metrc hasn't always held up its end of the bargain for you, and that's something I sincerely apologize for. I've been in my role for a little bit more than 6 months, and most of the people that are here with us have been here with us for less than that. And the folks that were here beforehand, it was just them. And so it's not been for lack of trying, but that's our problem, not your problem. And we certainly recognize that there's definitely been issues in the past that maybe have created other problems. This process, this structure, I think much more enhanced communication and a much stronger commitment that you can see, touch, and feel, hopefully gives you a better sense of where we expect to be as partners to you, and hopefully opens up opportunities for us to have a dialogue and a conversation on how we can best support your businesses. We truly believe in the notion of frictionless compliance. We are 100% of compliance and regulatory support business, but the harder it is for you to be compliant and be successful, at least in our system, the more challenging I think it is on the overall industry. And so we want to do the very best we can. We do take direction directly from TJ and folks in the state, but that doesn't mean it can't be a collaborative relationship in terms of how we can help ensure public health, public safety, compliance, and regulation are met in the most positive way possible. So I'm very appreciative that you even assembled for this user group, and I'm very appreciative that I was allowed the opportunity to join. To the extent we can be helpful to you in any way, I genuinely mean that. And so please don't hesitate to reach out. Questions? Just take questions. I don't know how this works. I'm not a government.
Very open.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can answer any questions. I can make sure everybody has my contact information. We'll do literally whatever it takes to try and support you as best we can. I know we've got a lot of catching up to do.
So in the spirit of support, have you all been sending Metrc representatives into these facilities and these different types of businesses? Because, each type of license operates completely differently from the other ones, and working almost exclusively for a processing license, we have been woefully underrepresented in how Metrc allows us to do our jobs.
And in not just in processing, when you think about indoor grow, outdoor grow, smaller indoor grow, smaller outdoor grow, these are very different. In different states, things run differently. In California, you're required to go through a distributor. It's not like that in every state. So you have these experiences, it makes it even more challenging because there's so much unique elements to kind of the way the industry works, and it's further siloed in your individual state. So even finding patriots that are in a similar position that you're in, sometimes it's hard. So we recognize that. The 3 biggest areas of concern that seem to arise in Metrc, and we're talking more, I think, about technical elements, but the overall experience, about support, training, and performance of the system. So these are the 3 areas that I spend the most time on. So I take support calls. I started 5 months ago, so I can understand exactly what people are experiencing. And so we actually have a new customer experience leader that started 3 weeks ago today, I believe. And that's about creating a fundamental shift in the support experience, which is related to the training experience. And so our training is generally like, this is how you use Metrc. But you have a very unique use case, and the way you use Metrc, even though it's the same way, it's very different in the way you think about it and what you have to put into it. And so this is not lost on me, it's not lost on us. I'm very excited about the next, I would say it's gonna take about 3 months before we're able to start demonstrating kind of a consistent flow back into the market, where you have, you can actually see and feel better training and better support experiences. The folks that are on site, so in this state, we've had limitations in the past, don't really understand all of them, but TJ knows a little bit more. When legalization started in some of the original states, and Oregon is one of them, but also in California and Colorado, Metrc specifically was kind of a, would it be fair to say like an employee sort of the state? Like we're very directed on what we could talk to, who we could talk to.
I'm not as familiar with that actually, so yeah. I mean, I think it's just as things were starting, rules were constantly in flux. Metrc's contractual arrangement with the state was up in the air for a little bit, if anyone remembers that. State got sued. So I think that sort of stuff in the early stages made it more difficult.
And so we weren't out there. And so whether it's in certain situations, I know we're restricted, in other situations we didn't, and that's certainly something we would wear. So the new structure in Matt and his organization is to create to separate our teams a bit in a geographical structure, such that you have a team of folks regionally that are here. So where if you're somebody that's calling like Metrc support every week because something's not working, we probably shouldn't have a conversation. So having somebody that can connect with you live, somebody that can come on site and like see what you're doing, you could have just a really unique niche experience that it's kind of a gap. And so finding ways to solve that and being proactive in the solution is absolutely what we're striving for.
And then this week, a handful of us have been out here since Monday and Tuesday. We did do some site visits with TJ and the team. So we are going on site, not just in Oregon, but in other states, and trying to spend as much time with individual licensees and group and organ associations as possible. James and I are actually talking about it before you all were doing the breakout. So we'd love to, him being new to the organization, newer to the industry, but has a lot of product knowledge. We'd love to just be like a fly on the wall one day and sit and watch people just in day-to-day interactions and use cases of Metrc, so that we can have those experiences that we can bring back and focus on as well. So it's not just an hour here, an hour there. Let's go spend an entire day in your facilities, watch you do your job, how you use Metrc and any other systems that you may interact with, and what are those touch points and frustration points.
Is there a way to sign up for?
Oh, it's a formal sign up.
Just internally, not including anything that was transferred out, we used over 8,000 individual tags in our facility in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like we are using Metrc all day, every day for everything that we do. And, I think that we try to be leaders and examples in compliance and, doing it as best as we can with limitations that are presented to us.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think I have a business card I'll give you too, and you have my contact information. I think any of us are happy to, if there's an opportunity for us to come and experience a day in the life, and especially utilizing our systems and software, and even if you had to go make a support call for us to hear what that's like, I think any of us would be more than happy to do it. I have a personal goal of traveling to every state that we have a contract with this year. So I'm already making my way down that list for those purposes. Right? Everybody, every state, every licensee has a different experience. So just trying to experience as many of those as possible. So I'm not making decisions in Tampa, Florida, that are just coming to my head. I want to make decisions that are based off of the actual feedback and experiences that I've been able to be a part of.
Yeah, to that point, in product management, you want to improve a product. We have a term we use, which is eating our own dog food. And so in my career, I've worked in e-commerce, shopping applications, streaming applications, boat selling applications, and those were all things that I could do. So I want to see how good my application is, or my little app on my phone. I want to see how good it is at buying a pair of shoes. Use the app, figure it out. Fortunately, I don't grow cannabis. I don't sell cannabis.
Not in the legal system.
Not in the. Not outside, no. So I can't eat my own dog food in this situation. So I really, Matt and I were brainstorming, like, I would love the opportunity, if it's okay with the states, not just in Oregon, but to start visiting and learning more about how you process, how you package. You know, I was at a place on Tuesday, and I was watching this young lady, and she's doing these packages, and she's trying to do auto sum, and it gives her an error. Now she's sitting there 100 times. And I'm like, oh my God, this poor woman. And so these are the things that I'm not going to see sitting in my office, you know, in Florida. I would really love to come out and eat some dog food. So it's something that we're going to work on.
And also, yeah, jumping in here too, I mean, I'll say the pandemic obviously throws a wrench in the works of meetings like this. Like this meeting is not just about how are we going to allocate our days. This meeting is about hearing from you, both from the state's perspective, Metrc's perspective, troubleshooting some things. You all are ambassadors and collecting information from others. You're disseminating information to them. So this is also kind of the venue to have some of these conversations and get to know each other and troubleshoot these things, right?
So what I'm hearing, did you bring more people onto Metrc, or did you purchase Metrc, or?
No.
Okay, so we're just bringing on more people, because I was like, okay, because I was here and I was like, I'm new, I'm 6 months in.
Yes, we have a lot of people. I mean, it's not a net. We have a lot of folks that were kind of part of the old Metrc that aren't here anymore. We have a lot of folks that were part of the old Metrc that were doing the work of 10 people, and they're hopefully a little bit more reasonable life balance. But then a lot of the folks. I mean, what works for a business that gets, you know, up to, I mean, there's over 350,000 active users of Metrc every day. And building a system that works for 100,000 in infrastructure, internal, and even the way we do accounting and legal and whatnot makes sense for a business this size. Doesn't necessarily make it for this size. And I think you start to see a lot of gaps and you start to see a lot of areas where we didn't really deliver in a way that's meaningful to you and really reflective of the partnership that we value and appreciate. And so something had to change. Metrc, I think, became a bit of a black box, and it's just not acceptable. So we are very committed. We very much appreciate the time, and I really can't stress enough. Like any question, any comments, any thoughts, any ways we can do things better. A lot of these individual things might take 75 days each, but we put them all together and kind of grab them into kind of a single flow. We get them done a lot faster, and that's a big reason for what James was talking about.
Great, thanks.
Do you guys take and pull all of our information from state to state to see what translates between?
Are you talking about user group?
Yeah, for our user group requests. Like for instance, if California, Colorado, Florida all want the same thing, are we still put in the position to vote on that? Or is there a potential where Metrc can be like, hey, we heard you, this showed up in 3 different states, here you go.
So
ideally, we never get to that. I mean, I'm sorry, TJ.
Well, I was just going to say, preface it with not every state does a user group, and the states that do have user groups, it's not the same. Like this is something that we've put together for what works for us, right? And we stole the idea from Colorado, but modified it. I'm not sure that Colorado still does a user group. I don't know how they do it exactly. So there's some user groups, but it's not going to be exactly the same in the sense that there's not like a list from every user group for every state that can be pulled together, but I think the idea is, like Michael's talking about, things can percolate in, and it's not like a rigid rote thing exclusively, right? Like the goal is to get ahead of these things.
Yeah, ideally we're not reactive, and so Metrc for so long has been reactive. You have a problem, you call support, we hunt it down. Like we have a lot of shoring up to do, especially as I mentioned, support training and performance side. So there's definitely some catching up to do, and I don't want to pretend that that's not something I'm paying attention to. We really are. But you kind of shift to what is directionally, we're spending enough time. We know the products better than anybody's know the products. You know how your operations work better than anybody else. So you can say, this is what I need for my operations. You can't say Metrc has to do this. You might think like, if I just had this button, it would be better. But people that understand Metrc better than anybody else can see like, actually that button might make it worse. Like, we do this other thing that's even easier. And so as we get better at paying attention to the nuances that happen in your businesses and what you mentioned, sir, about what's unique to your organization, able to kind of build into our processes incremental improvements in those areas before you even have to ask for them. And that's the ideal situation.
How are you pulling that data?
Well, a lot of it is actually boots on the ground. I really strongly in what's referred to in 2006 when I was getting to Gemba, which is Japanese word for where the action is, and understanding exactly how things happen. But while we're in other states, like this doesn't likely matter to you. What matters to you is what's happening in Oregon, and so paying very close attention to what the challenges are, what we see in Oregon. Like for example, if there's a lot of support calls about a certain area of the system specific to Oregon, right? And so it's obviously either there's a gap in training, there's a gap in product, there's a gap in communication, probably all three, and how it is. And so what specifically are we doing in an intentional way to get ahead of that? So not only are we not being reactive and we're shoring up that pain, but we're also identifying other opportunities to surprise and delight your experiences with Metrc. Okay.
Is there an ETA on a Metrc mobile version?
I think California has, right?
They do, but it's not. We're not going to deliver anything to you guys anymore that doesn't at the very least keep performance at the same level of the system, or moreover significantly improve it. And so California has something that is not something that we're going to have something for you. I can't commit to a timeline right now, but this is very top mind. It's very, very topical conversation.
Anything else for anyone? Questions, comments?
Are we getting an email for the next meeting, or how's that gonna work?
Yeah, logistically, like I said, we'll take the votes, figure out what day, the next two meetings, what's gonna work, and then we will send stuff out.
Are we able to get a list of the ideas we came up with today?
We will figure out a way to percolate that too. So the run of show now is Metrc takes the stuff you just did, they go back and they scope it, and then they come back with an LOE. So we could send something out, but it's not gonna have like this, right? Of how much
Yeah,
time
it's more
until the
just
next
like a-
meeting.
Just kind of like what we talked about, what everyone brought up. I'd like to discuss that with my team back at work.
Yep, we can make that happen.
Or the recording.
Yeah, not for this time, because I didn't take good enough notes for that. So maybe next time. But I think there were some, like the adjustment reasons, the rejection reasons, like those sorts of things that you asked about. Send to marijuana.cts, and we can also start that dialogue with you about some of those things, because a lot of what's in Metrc is also populated by the state, right? And some of those things have been populated since 2016, and things have changed or whatever else. So we don't want it to be too big or too nebulous or whatever else. So we'll maintain, edit control and editorial control, but we definitely welcome the thoughts if there are gaps or things that you feel need to be added in those regards with those drop downs. All right, thank you all. Safe trip home.
Did you shoot you an email to give us a time to
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, you get that away from me. Just send me through something.
They rescheduled